Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone finally confess the truth about an event that happened years ago, only to realize they admitted it at the safest possible moment? That kind of moment when the storm has passed, the danger is gone, and suddenly it's bravery time. Well, buckle up, because today's story might make you laugh, cringe, and shake your head all at once. And before we dive in, if you want more bold, witty, and sharp analysis like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for Global Insight News right now. Your support keeps us going strong. Now, let's roll back to 2022. That was the year when best-selling author Malcolm Gladwell, yes, the same guy known for talking about tipping points, outliers, and blink moments of genius, sat on a panel to discuss the hot-button issue of transgender athletes in competitive sports. At the time, he stayed quiet. He smiled politely, nodded, and played along with the narrative. But recently, Gladwell came forward admitting something shocking. He actually agreed with those who were skeptical about transgender athletes competing against biological women, yet he said nothing. Not a peep. He claims he was too afraid to voice his real thoughts. Now, here's where things get interesting. On the surface, his confession sounds like honesty. After all, it takes a certain humility to look back and admit, I was scared. But is this really bravery? Or is it simply a safe PR move years later when the tide has shifted? Let's be honest, true courage is speaking up when it matters, not waiting until the cultural coast is clear. Imagine a firefighter bragging about running into a burning building after the flames were already put out. Not exactly hero material, right? Gladwell himself said he felt ashamed of that panel performance, admitting that he agreed 100% with the position questioning whether biological advantages create an uneven playing field. He said, I thought it was nuts, but I didn't say anything. Well, that's one way of putting it. Many people might call it cowardice dressed up in regret. Think about it. At the time, women in collegiate swimming were openly watching their chances evaporate as they competed against an athlete like Leah Thomas, who had a very different physiological advantage. These women were terrified to speak up, fearing they'd be labeled as hateful or bigoted. And here was Malcolm Gladwell, a man with a huge platform, reputation, and influence, sitting silently, choosing to go with the flow instead of sharing the risk. Now, when I say sharing the risk, that's a crucial idea. It means stepping out into the storm with those who are vulnerable, not hiding in the back until the sky's clear. People who stuck their necks out early were ridiculed, mocked, sometimes even cancelled. Meanwhile, Gladwell chose the comfort of silence. Only now, when the debate has shifted and more people openly question fairness in sports, does he confess, oh yeah, I agreed all along. That's like joining a protest march only after the government has already surrendered. Brave? Not exactly. And let's pause for a second, because while Gladwell admits his shame, he still frames it as though something was done to him. He paints himself as cowed by social pressure, as if he was forced into silence. But let's be honest, he wasn't muzzled by anyone. He had a choice: speak the truth as he saw it, or stay quiet to preserve his brand, his speaking gigs, and his popularity. He chose silence. That wasn't someone else's doing. That was his own decision. Now here's where the comedy creeps in. When Gladwell talks about being ashamed, it almost sounds like someone bragging about quitting a bad habit. Like, hey, I stopped doing the wrong thing, give me some credit. That's like a drunk driver saying, sure, I was drinking and driving, but hey, at least I used my turn signal when I pulled into a playground. Not exactly medal-worthy. Let's also address the timing. Why now? Why is Malcolm Gladwell suddenly comfortable admitting this? Could it be that the cultural tide is turning? That public opinion has shifted just enough to make it safe? That journalists and scientists are now publishing data questioning fairness without being instantly crucified? If that's the case, then his confession is less about moral clarity and more about opportunism. And notice the pattern: people who kept quiet for years suddenly find their voices when it's risk-free. It's like that guy at a bar fight who only starts shouting once the bouncer has already broken it up. Yeah, you better run. Sure, tough guy, now that it's safe. Let's zoom out for a second. This isn't just about sports, or Malcolm Gladwell, or one panel discussion. This is about the larger cultural climate of fear. For years, people have whispered one thing privately while posting another on social media. At dinner parties, they'd admit doubts about fairness in competition. But on Twitter? Oh, they'd hashtag their loyalty to the trendiest cause. Why? Because they were terrified of the mob. Terrified of losing status, income, or friends. In short, terrified of risk. Now, what happens when influential people refuse to share that risk? The mob grows bigger, bolder, more confident. Every silence is like fuel for the fire. And those who actually did stick their necks out were left alone on the front lines, ridiculed while others secretly agreed with them. That is what creates a culture of conformity. That is why the so-called cancel culture gained so much ground. Gladwell's late confession is almost like someone trying to sneak onto the right side of history after the fact. But you can't rewrite the past. The truth is, he chose silence when his voice mattered most. Now, don't get me wrong, honesty is better late than never. And maybe, just maybe, his admission will encourage others to finally say what they believe. But let's not confuse regret with courage. Courage is saying it when it's hard. Courage is losing sleep, losing gigs, maybe even losing friends, but still telling the truth. Regret is just a delayed acknowledgement, a safer way of saying, yeah, I thought so too, when the danger has passed. And what's really fascinating here is how many moments of honesty we're now seeing in public life. Politicians, journalists, authors, even Hollywood celebrities are suddenly finding their voices they apparently lost sometime around 2016. Many argue that Donald Trump, whatever you think of him, acted like a kind of human truth serum. People came within a mile of him, and suddenly their true thoughts slipped out. But if someone else had been in office, say Kamala Harris, people like Gladwell might have stayed silent forever, too scared of losing favor in elite circles. Now, here's the real kicker. Think about how many people sat quietly, playing along with things they didn't believe in. That's not just about sports or one issue. That same silence existed around topics like border chaos, media hoaxes, or economic failures. People knew something was off, but they kept quiet until it was safe. And every time someone stayed quiet, the mob's grip got stronger. That's the tragedy of cowardice. It doesn't just protect you, it empowers the very force you're afraid of.